Lib Dem leader, Sir Vince Cable, today ruled himself out of running to become London's next mayor, and it may be a couple of months before we know who the party will put up as a candidate. The Twickenham MP spoke to our political correspondent Simon Harris at the party's conference in Brighton today, and he began by asking him why the Lib Dems are struggling in London.
Well, we're coming back very strongly in London. We did have two difficult elections in 15 and 17, but in the May elections this year, we gained councils, including mine, including Kingscote.
You lost 12 seats in Sutton.
And they've been an incumbent council for many years. They still run it. They've had a great track record. But inevitably, people tend to vote against incumbents. But if you look at the overall position, you know, I would like us to be, you know, top of the opinion polls. But we've gone up from 10 to 15 in the last few months.
Do you think you've made a difference?
Well, certainly the results are much better since I took over.
We asked some Londoners this morning if they could name the leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Can you tell me who's the leader of the Liberal Democrats at the moment?
No.
I'm not too sure. Sorry.
No idea. Tim Farron?
It's the guy that was on Dancing, isn't it? What's his name?
Vince Cable?
Out of 10, just 2 knew your name.
Well, that was a very peculiar sample because I think most of the surveys I've suggested, not that people know my name, but they actually approve of it.
The Conservatives will this month name their candidate for mayor. Why haven't you started the process?
Well, we will be starting the process quite shortly, and we've got some very strong potential candidates, and they will
When
be
you say
seriously
shortly, when will you
competitive.
choose a candidate?
Well, I'm not naming the exact time, but I would imagine that...
Have you been left behind by the Tories?
No, by the end of the autumn, I would have thought that this process is getting underway. No, there's no enormous urgency.
You, of course, have announced you're giving up as leader, although not when. Are you tempted to go for Mayor of London?
Not particularly. No, I'm doing the job I enjoy doing and is worth doing, and I've set myself a whole lot of demanding tasks for a considerable time ahead. I want to see us through the Brexit process, see us through any early general election, if there is one, leading us through it, and the other side, seeing us through a round of local government elections outside of London, and the reforms to the party, which I introduced here, I want to make sure those are successfully completed. So there's a big job of work to be done.
So Mayor of London holds no appeal to you?
It's an important job. Had I had my time again, it's something I might have taken on the way, but I've had a very full life. I've had 5 years as a cabinet minister. I'm now leading a party. I wish the next Mayor of London well, and I think we will field some very good candidates for it.
Jeremy Corbyn is under increasing pressure to back a second referendum on Brexit next week. At the Labour Party conference, 22 London constituency parties will call for a second vote. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan also backs the idea. Well, in an interview with ITV News, he also refused to be drawn on his row with Barking MP Margaret Hodge, who reportedly swore at him and called him an anti-Semite. But first, our political correspondent Simon Harris asked him why he won't support a second referendum.
A second referendum is open for discussion. It's not closed off, but the priority is to get an agreement now with the European Union. We're leaving the EU in less than 6 months.
Sadiq Khan says there should be a second referendum. 22 London Labour parties say there should be a second referendum. Why will you not say there also should be?
At conference, we're going to put forward our proposals, but if the government cannot deliver on its negotiations, cannot get the conclusion of its negotiations through Parliament, then we think it's time for a general election so the public as a whole can decide who they want to be.
Do you
the
really
government of this
think
country.
Theresa May is going to make the same mistake twice and call another general election?
If she cannot govern and cannot get her proposals through Parliament, then the government has no credibility and no ability to survive.
60% of Londoners voted to stay in the
Indeed,
EU. You're the leader of the opposition. They're looking to you. Why won't you just take the simple step and say, yes, a second vote?
I don't know what the question would be in a second vote any more than you do. I don't know what the result of a second vote would be any more than you do. What I do know is there's an urgency now of getting a trade arrangement with Europe and protection of our working conditions, environmental and consumer standards.
Is Sadiq Khan wrong to call for a second referendum?
Sadiq Khan is perfectly entitled to call for it. Indeed, I discussed it with him last week.
But you disagree with him?
I want us to pressurise for the 6 tests we've got in order to protect our trade and economic relations for the future. That is my priority.
If there was a second referendum, would you back?
It's an if.
Would you back Remain or
We
leave?
don't know what the question's going to be. Is the question going to be on the deal? Is the question going to remain? What's the question going to be? What are the alternatives going to be? I think the priority is a trade relationship with Europe.
Can I ask you about anti-Semitism? You had a row with Margaret Hodge. We've not heard your side of the story. What was said?
The matter is concluded. It's closed.
It's very public.
The
What was
matter
said?
has been closed.
Did she swear at you?
No, look, the matter is closed. I'm not going to discuss it anymore. What I'm going to simply say to you is, I don't tolerate anti-Semitism in any form in our lives, our society, or in the Labour Party. And I don't tolerate racism in any form in our society or our party. That's been my whole life, and that will be my life always, to oppose racism.
What do you think of Margaret Hodge?
I know Margaret extremely well. In this very town hall, she was the leader of the council, and we got along well when she was leader of the council. She disagrees sometimes, agrees other times. She's a colleague in Parliament and represents.
Have you forgiven her?
Listen, the matter is closed.
Simon, Labour conference kicks off on Sunday. How likely is it then the two issues, second referendum and anti-Semitism within the party, are going to dominate?
Well, both will rear their head. Although Jeremy Corbyn publicly backed Remain during the referendum, he's a long track record of opposition to EU membership. In particular, he doesn't like competition rules, which would frustrate his plans to take the railways back into public ownership. Also, he's aware that many traditional Labour voters, particularly in the north of the country, voted to leave. So any second vote which might reverse that decision would be awkward for him. But pressure is growing, not just from the mayor, but particularly from those constituency Labour parties which want the party conference next week to formally adopt a second referendum.
All right, Simon, thank you.